what Gordon failed to tell me is that my head was going to be on this jumbotron this morning. So, wow. Hope. It's a simple word, 4 letters, and we say it all the time. We hope someone gets better. We hope a family heals. We hope a child finds their way. We hope tomorrow looks different than today. But hope doesn't happen by accident. Hope is built. It's built through compassion, through service, through people who refuse to give up on others. Good morning, everyone. My name is Melissa O'Neill Lowe, and I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Constituent Affairs at the Maine Department of Education. It is such an honor to be here with you all this morning. Wow. I'd be remiss, though, if before I introduce our keynote speaker this morning, if I didn't take a moment to recognize someone that I respect very much, value, and consider a friend, that has spent the last 8 years helping Maine and all of you build hope. I've had the privilege of working closely with Gordon, first in my role in the governor's office as the director of boards and commissions, where I relied on him heavily, and again in my current role at the Maine Department of Education. Because our work has continued to overlap, it's allowed me countless opportunities to witness his unwavering commitment to the people of Maine and to every one of you sitting here today. He's been a tireless advocate, a convener, and a champion, reminding us that behind every statistic is a person, a family, and a story. As many of you are aware, this is Gordon's final opiate response summit before his retirement. I know that I likely speak for everybody here in this room today when I say, Gordon, thank you for your leadership, your compassion, your steadfast belief that recovery is possible and hope is not just a 4-letter word. So, that brings me to today's keynote speaker, which brings me so much joy and so much hope. Kathryn Goetzke is the CEO and Chief Hope Officer of the Shine Hope Company. She's an internationally recognized hope scientist, global mental health advocate, and the author of the biggest little book about hope. Her work has been recognized by organizations around the world. It is grounded in decades of personal research together with lived experiences that demonstrate that hope is indeed measurable and teachable. Kathryn also represents the World Federation for Mental Health at the United Nations and helped advance the International Day of Hope that was just celebrated on Sunday, July 12th. Those accomplishments alone would make Kathryn an extraordinary keynote speaker today. However, they aren't why I am so honored to introduce her today. I first met Kathryn last February during our Maine Department of Education's Winter Wellness Summit, where we connected almost immediately. I mean, the dresses, it wasn't planned. So there was a connection for sure. Her bright, yellow, sunshiny spirit is truly infectious, as you will all get to see very shortly, and it's why I'm wearing yellow today. At the time when Kathryn and I met, my own family had found itself navigating a deeply personal, very real, and very lived challenge. Little did I know the role of this new person that had just walked in my life would play. Kathryn didn't hesitate, even though we had just met. She made time, she listened, she witnessed my fear, but most importantly, she helped me replace that fear with understanding and, most importantly, education. She armed me with knowledge, perspective, and compassion at a time where all three were desperately needed explaining to me that this was not the fault of anyone, and illuminated for me the psychology behind and between hopelessness and hope, and that hopelessness does not equate to or define us in our darkest hours. That is who Kathryn is. She simply doesn't teach hope, she lives it. As we all gather here today, whether we work in healthcare, education, law enforcement, government, treatment prevention, recovery, or community advocacy, we are united by one belief that people can heal, that lives can change, that tomorrow can be different from today. Because hope isn't just something we wish for, it's something we build. It's something that your keynote speaker, Kathryn Goetzke, practices each and every single day. Hope is indeed a contagion, and it is why I'm so excited and honored to be here with you all today for you to witness firsthand just how contagious hope can be. Please join me in giving a warm Maine welcome to my friend, the matriarch of hope, Kathryn Goetzke.
Love you so much. Yes. Okay, we have to take a selfie. I'm sorry, this is just too historic. Yes, with all of you. Sorry, Gordon. Gordon, you want to get in it? No. Amazing. Wow. So touching and so grateful for you, Melissa. Incredible, and so incredible to be here with all of you today. I am here, yes, to talk about hope as the antidote and share with you my own experience, strength, and hope. So thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back at Maine. Super excited to be here. My name is Kathryn Goetzke, as you all know. And my sobriety date is 7/20/2004. So I am a person, thank you. So, it's coming up in a couple days, 22 years. So this is very significant for me and very meaningful. I am a grateful recovering addict and alcoholic. So this is especially meaningful for me today to be talking to all of you. So this is a participatory presentation. I am going to share with you all I know about hope, my journey to get to hope, where I am today, and skills that you all can use and take home. I'm going to share everything I know around hopelessness and hope. So it is participatory. So if you don't know how to use a Mentimeter, you can either go to menti.com and put in the number 2259-4161. So this is, use your phones, or you can use that QR code. So I just want to get a pulse of the room. How hopeful does everyone feel right now? Where's our hope? Yay, amazing. All right, so this is not the validated scale. This is just to get a pulse of the room. And one thing I always say about this, no matter where you are on your hope journey, once you learn skills and tools, you can find your way from hopelessness to hope. And I'm going to teach you and share with you about my own journey for that. So we're at about a 7.8 right now, and people will still come in, and if you have any questions about doing that, but we're going to be doing participation throughout this presentation. All right, so what it was like. I'm going to talk about that first. I grew up in Chicago, a suburb called Oak Park, Illinois. I had two older brothers, or have two older brothers. One's name is Fred and one's name is Arnold. And there's a picture of myself and my dad. Mom and dad were married. I was super close with my dad. So he was a retail banker. He knew Sam Walton, which was, I thought, amazing. We used to go to Walmart annual meetings. I learned all about retail as a very young kid. I'd go to his bank on the weekends. I had a super strong bond with my dad. And also my dad struggled a lot. You know, he struggled with his temper, he struggled with anger, and I had a hard time navigating that because this was someone I loved so, so much, and someone that was also very angry and got very activated very easily. So it was there was a lot of trauma happening in the household. And then when I was 18 years old, I was a freshman in college, my dad died by suicide. And it shook my entire world. But that's not when my addiction started. My addiction started much earlier. I was probably 9 or 10 or 11 when I started drinking, and I got into a liquor cabinet and I just drank straight gin. And I just remember that feeling through my body of absolute, like, I felt okay. For the first time, I just felt my nervous system just calmed right down. And that addiction took off throughout high school, college, drank significantly. And then when I lost my dad, it just got worse. And I was a binge drinker and a blackout drinker. And, you know, it was a rough journey. And then I would go from one addiction I found to the next addiction, to the next addiction, to the next addiction. And I would fix one thing and then I would have another problem. I would be compulsive or obsessive about something else. And so I, went on this journey. I then, in my early 20s, I had my own suicide attempt. I was not in a suicidal state. I wasn't in a major depressive episode. I had an experience. I was very intoxicated, and it was a very impulsive thing to do. And it took me 10 years to tell anyone else about it. Thankfully, I got an undergrad degree. I still, worked. I got an international MBA. I worked for big companies, and I seemed to manage my addictions somehow, made it through. And I decided when I was I started my own company and brand called The Mood Factory. The brand was called Mood Lights. This was over, almost 22 years ago. And I wanted to support a nonprofit in the mental health space because of how much it had taken from me. And so I looked at other nonprofits and I found that mental health had a real branding issue. The images that people were using, they were, hiding in a closet or looking so alone and isolated. And I thought that's not really what depression and anxiety look like. And then I learned that less than 25% of people with anxiety and depression were getting treated, and it's very treatable. So I thought, well, I guess I'll start my own nonprofit. And that is what I did. I started the International Foundation for Research and Education on Depression. And I started that on my sobriety date. Now, I didn't have some catastrophic event happen when I got sober. There were enough problems throughout my life that alcohol and substances caused. But why I got sober is because I started looking at the research, and doctors told me I was at a very high risk of suicide because of all of the risk factors. And so I thought, well, alcohol, substances increase your risk of suicide exponentially. And if I'm going to start a nonprofit in the mental health space, I better start living according to what I'm teaching. And so I committed to my recovery on that date. I did therapy, I did medication, I did a year-long program that we went through the steps in this program. And as we've heard, everyone's recovery journey is different. Everyone has their own path, their own way of going. And my aim for everyone is to help you feel better, to improve, and we'll talk about your hope, and to get to a place where you want to go. And so, the recovery journey is so individual. But when I started, I wasn't satisfied with what was currently happening in the recovery space because there's such a high relapse rate. And I thought, I don't want to relapse. So I got really committed to figuring out everything I could about recovery and addiction, depression, suicide, anxiety. So I started this nonprofit and I started traveling around the world. I joined the global mental health movement. I'm a brand expert, marketing expert, business strategist. And so I'd attend every conference I can get to and listen to all of these leading experts in global mental health about what they're telling me and everyone about addiction. And here's what I learned. I'm told by doctors I'm at a high risk of suicide, and then I'm told, restrict your access to means, and so lock up your guns, your medications, all of that, and here's an 800 number. And that was, at the time, the method for me for suicide prevention, or in what they were teaching. Now, those are great for time of crisis, yet I knew for me that was not going to keep me here. Those methods weren't helpful for me, and I also knew that if you want to prevent something, you have to get to the root cause of it. And so I set out on a journey to understand the root cause of suicide, and that's what I have been doing for the last several years. So I'm going to take you through now what I know about that. Hopelessness is the idea that things are bad and there's nothing I can do about it. That's all kind of what hopelessness is, and then we'll talk about hope. And what I started learning is there's this global epidemic of hopelessness. That I found the main stats earlier to be very inspiring. There's a CDC did a national study recently that 57% of our teen girls identify with persistent hopelessness, over 40% of our youth. And if that doesn't scare us and shock us and drive us to action, I don't know what will. Over half of our girls are identifying with this persistent state of hopelessness. We know hopelessness leads to all risky behaviors in youth and addiction. I was in the most hopeless states as I chose, substances. And the deeper I got in that hole, the more that hopelessness just took over. Loneliness, anxiety and depression. Again, hopelessness, as I got into the literature, came up as that single consistent predictor of suicide. And to me, that was incredible information, because if it's hopelessness, it's not anxiety, it's not depression, it's hopelessness, then if I can understand hopelessness, that is how we are going to prevent suicide. And so I set out to figure out hopelessness to understand it. And what I came to learn, it's a negative expectation about the self and the future, and it's made up of two key ingredients. Emotional despair, so you feel sad, angry, afraid, coupled with a sense of helplessness, so you feel powerless to do anything about it. So, and again, it's the single consistent predictor of all risky behaviors in youth. So I thought, why doesn't everyone know what this is, and why doesn't everyone know how to get to hope? Hope can feel, when I lost my dad, my whole future, who's gonna walk me down? All of these things kept me in this persistent state of hopelessness. And then when I broke hopelessness down, it's actually very normal. And hopelessness is the primary symptom of depression. So to me, symptom was that clue. It's a moment in time. It's something that happens over and over. And if it's a symptom and a moment in time, if you can understand that moment and learn to manage that moment and learn how to get to hope, get moving back towards hope, that is how you prevent suicide. So when you look at these two, the helplessness up there, I thought, okay, what's the opposite of helplessness? How do we get out? Well, you're taking inspired action. So to me, that was high hope. You're moving from helplessness and into action. And emotional despair, sadness, anger, fear, how do we get out of that and get to having positive feelings? So to me, it was amazing, because you can always manage your helplessness and get to action. You can be taught skills for how to do that. Might not be the action that you want, or it might be taking no action, yet you can always learn. And you can always get out of despair. You can always manage your negative emotional states and get to feeling better. And sometimes it just takes time and patience and courage and all of the things we know in recovery. So then I set out on a mission to ensure all knew how to hope. And what I learned too about hopelessness, there are these micro moments of hopelessness. We can't We can't get something working in technology, and we have that, fear, and then we have that sense of powerlessness. And it's how do we navigate these moments? They're all unconsciously happening, and it's about making it conscious and then being proactive about how we move towards hope. There are also systemic reasons for hopelessness, and if you focus on that, it will keep you stuck in your despair and your sense of helplessness unless you learn, again, how am I going to manage my anger, fear, sadness about this, and how am I going to get out of helplessness into action? Where is my power in this situation? Because the more we focus on things that we can't control, the more we inadvertently stay in those cycles of hopelessness. Hope, on the other hand, is the belief the future can be better than today and that I and we have the power to make it so. I looked at this definition and I thought, this impacts everything. If you don't believe that you can create a better future and that you don't have the power to make it so, what are we all moving towards? And so when I started my programming, what I did is I thought, okay, I'm going to teach people how to hope, and I'm going to test out the theory that you can teach hope. And so I created a program for young kids, initially 7 to 11-year-olds, because of the increase in anxiety and depressive symptoms that happen in those young years, and came up with lessons. I looked at hope scales. There were validated hope scales, and then I took these validated hope scales, and then I looked at the definition of hope, and I pulled out the key words in that, and I thought, if we're going to teach hope, and then I also looked at hopelessness and emotional despair and helplessness, so creating a program to teach how we move through that towards hope. Because the incredible thing that I didn't know is that they were measuring hope, scientists were measuring hope, and they knew all of the positive outcomes associated with hope, but they weren't teaching you how to hope. And when you have the biggest challenges in your life, how do you navigate the moments of hopelessness and get towards hope? So I set out to prove out my theory that you could teach hope as a skill, created a program, and then went studying it all over the world. Ulster University in Northern Ireland. It was just starting out with this concept, but then we did the research with Ulster and were able to show, yes, over 12 weeks, we could teach these students in school hope science and how to be hopeful. And as we increased hope in these youth, symptoms of anxiety, depression, violence decreased, connection went up, all of these positive things. And I thought, well, then this is the most important thing in the world I can be doing. So I put my other company to the side, and I've been really focused on understanding hopelessness and operationalizing it globally, because I believe there's no more important thing and skill we can learn. And especially for those in recovery, hope has played such a key role in my own recovery. So this is the hope scale. It's a Snyder hope scale. It's validated. They have a children's one. There are some other hope scales as well. We like this one because of all the research that's published on the outcomes as it relates to hope. They just did a study in Australia, the first longitudinal study on hope, and it predicts all, human flourishing. It's no big surprise to me, yet it's great to see this research validated. We know the power of hope in youth, GPA, sports performance, graduation rates, how well they do in school, if they go to college, safety, all of these things. Increased soccer reaction time for all of you soccer folks, and decreased risky behaviors. So if we can increase hope, all of these other things decrease. So it's so powerful. And I just published new research on hope as a strategy in global development, sustainable development. So, we looked at all of these studies, and we looked at all the sustainable development goals and mapped hope to each of them. So a lot of research cited here. I like to, I want outcomes in what I do. I want evidence-based approaches to how we tackle this global mental health crisis, addiction crisis, and violence. So this is the framework that we then created. I'm going to take you through the framework and share, this is what I've learned and what we know, and it differs a bit from traditional hope science, but it's evolving that, and it's really coming at it from hopelessness. So SHINE is a mnemonic for how we cultivate hope in our lives. And this is my friend Grant Denton in Reno, Nevada. He's got an incredible story, but we have people write their stories. And We do a lot of stories in recovery, and one of my biggest challenges with that is a lot of people spend a lot of time on all of the problems that they had in their early, and we can relate to them, but we need to know the solutions. What's working? What are people doing in their lives that's working in our recovery? How are we getting better? How are we supporting each other and getting better? I want to know what's working for each and every one of the people that have come from the hardest places and are getting there. So we have this format where you write your challenge, what your challenge is, and then the specific skills that you used and navigated to get through that challenge. So these are the 5 keys to hope, and this is where you're going to participate a little bit. I'll take you through them, and then we'll ask you to share your own. So stress skills. This is how we identify and manage our stress response. And to me, this is just the hallmark of addiction. This was my problem. This was my dad's problem. This is why people are in jail, and this is why we pick up and use. We have a physiological response to triggers in our environment. A physiological stress response. So when someone does something or says something, or we read something, or we have this trigger, and stress hormones flood our bodies. So it takes 90 seconds for those stress hormones to be released after the point of trigger. Now, the stress hormones keep us in the downstairs brain where we can't access our frontal lobe and our critical thinking and our ability to solve problems and our ability to make good decisions. So we're triggered, we can't access our thinking brain, we're reactive, we pick up, we use, and we wonder why we keep doing it. Well, there's a physiological reason for it. So one of the key things for me was learning how to, feel my trigger. You can feel them when they're happening and intervene before I use anything. I mean, so many substances I've had to create, and it's all because I was just wanting that relief, that instant relief, but it takes 90 seconds. And it's not just a decision I make. I'm not making a decision because I can't actually access that part of my brain that makes healthy, good decisions. So learning how to manage and navigate that stress response is, to me, one of the most important things in our recovery journey. It was important for me. And my dad had this stress response. He'd get triggered. He'd go to rage. And I could see it was physiological with him. Like, he wasn't thinking rational. You couldn't connect with him. You couldn't. And kids we work with in prison, they're saying, like, I keep doing the same thing. I don't understand why. Yeah, there's a biological reason for it. So how do we intervene biologically? And to me, bringing in the biology of it is very helpful in reducing stigma and shame around why we keep repeating the same thing. So identifying and manage our stress response with stress skills. And this is the downstairs brain that dominates, the trigger. 90 seconds. If you've ever been triggered by anything and try to wait 90 seconds, it's like 10 years, It feels like forever. And it's from the point of last trigger. So basically, anything you do in those 90 seconds is probably going to be a really unhealthy decision. So learning how to wait that out through things like breathing, learning how to meditate so you can better intercept that stress response, going for a walk, taking a break, anything to keep you from not engaging when you're from that activated place. So I'd like to know from all of you, and I'll also send this presentation after. We're going to get everyone's brilliant ideas on how we navigate our stress response for impulse control. So I want you to put into Mentimeter. It's menti.com, same place, 2259-4161. Be as creative as you want to be. How are we navigating? How are people doing this right now? Like, what are the skills? Because this is how we learn. This is how we connect and figure out solutions that maybe we haven't thought of. Tree pose, I love that. Humming a song, there's great research around humming. Breath, deep breathing, walk the dog, take a time out. Piano, not today. Time with pets, painting, guitar, forgiveness. I mean, to me, like, I have to remember all of these things. Another thing now that's become a challenge for me is texting. I'm reactive and I text something, and it's like, I have to learn how to constantly regulate it. You know, Melissa said, I'm a constant practitioner of everything I teach, and just because I know it doesn't mean I'm perfect at it, but I'm constantly working on it. This is amazing. And then, you know, we learn together, but to me, this is so important for hope overall, is learning how to identify and manage your stress response and having healthy interventions ready for you and finding what works for you, you know? Amazing. We go to happiness habits. So we need happy hormones. We have stress hormones. Stress keeps us in our downstairs brain. If we have too much stress, we get burnt out. Well, what are happiness hormones? Happy hormones are the hormones that help us feel good, that keep us in the upstairs brain, where we can problem solve, when we can think critically. And so how are we getting these? You know, for me, when I lost my dad, I stopped doing the things that brought me joy, and I was drinking and, you know, just all of these unhealthy behaviors because I wanted to feel better. And the interesting thing about happy hormones is if you're violent, when you're violent, you get a hit of dopamine. When you choose addictive substances, that gives you that immediate relief. There's actually a chemical reason for this. And so it's learning how to replace the substances with healthier things that give you what you want, what your body craves, and what your body needs. So having a morning routine, utilizing strengths, finding purpose, these are all things that generate these happy hormones for us. Gratitude, purposeful living, volunteering, service work, family and friends, wonder and awe, experiencing wonder and awe, time in nature. You know, it's hard to want to do these when you're in pain, and yet when you're in pain is the time you need to do these the most, because your body needs these. We need these to be engaged and healthy in life. And so this goes through more of the happy hormones, and I would like to know from all of you, do you have non-negotiable happiness habits? So what are things that are non-negotiable for you that you will always do no matter what? Or do you have a list of those? And if you don't, I encourage you, you know, stop working. That's hilarious. Oh my gosh. Luke Combs session, I love it. Exercise, ride my horse, going to the gym, golf, horse videos, pets, laughter is so good for you. Reading, good sleep, absolutely. I mean, sleep for me, my nutrition, exercise. If I don't get my exercise, like my dopamine, my serotonin is depleted. I mean, I have to replace. And that's actually how I quit smoking. I had to replace it with running. Like I had to replace that habit with something else that was healthier. Gardening, therapy, writing, prayer. Prayer is an incredible, happiness habit. Time alone. And there's so much research on all of these. And if you look at these, you'll also notice they're all most of them are free. You know, you can do all of these on your own. So without paying anything, these are all, our body can generate all of these things within us, which I find fascinating. I mean, I've been super off medications, therapy the last 10 years because I practice these every day and I'm very consistent about it. And to me, this is how I keep myself here. This is how I'm saving my life. Inspired actions are how do we move towards goal? How do we get out of our helplessness and into actions? And as you know, when you're in that space of desperation, like sometimes it's no action or doing the next right action. And to me, you know, it's day by day, it's minute by minute, it's hour by hour. But what are we doing? How are we moving towards a life, creating a life that we want? And so we talk about different ways to set goals, intrinsic goals that are meaningful to us as opposed to extrinsic. We're doing it for money or for fame or we know that meaning is so important to creating a hopeful life. SMART goals, so, you know, when I lost my dad, I wanted my dad back. And if I go through the SMART goal process of having my dad here, it becomes very clear: specific, relevant, attainable, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So is it attainable? No, I can't have my dad here, but what did I want? I wanted mentors in my life. I wanted a father-like figure. And so I worked to build those connections. So I had to re-goal, and that's the thing about hope. sometimes we don't get what we hope for, and we have to learn how to move towards something else, re-goal, create a new hope, because something doesn't work out. And a really interesting thing about the motivation loop, which we get motivated by taking the first step. So I don't think, hey, I am so excited to go to the gym today. I think, I'm gonna go to the gym, and I get to the gym and I start running and I'm like, oh, this feels good, I wanna do more. So motivation doesn't come by our thought, it comes by our doing. We have to do the first thing before we then become motivated. And that's a lot of challenge with people moving to recovery. We think that we're gonna be just motivated to not do that, but it actually, you have to start doing the work, and that is what feeds your motivation. So how do you all take the first step when it's hard? And what are you seeing in the communities of recovery? How do you get that first step moving? How do you get taking inspired actions out of my wife makes me, that should be like the big one, right? Just do it. Finding a specific task, being determined, eating chocolate, that's hilarious. Family support, have a conversation. Self-talk. Self-talk is so critical. Just do it. Nike would like this for. Accountability partners. Sign up. Finding a specific task. Do it anyway. I mean, that's how do we get going? How do we get out of our helplessness and into action? And knowing that, we don't just automatically want to get there. We have to do things that then actually get us taking that first step. And as we take that first step, it feeds off itself. Really helpful. Prayer, really good. Accountability partner. And we'll talk about that in a second too. Okay, I love that. And keep adding. And I'm gonna send these out as JPEGs and put them up on your wall, put them up in your recovery centers. Like, we gotta reinforce that we have to do these things if we wanna keep moving towards recovery and towards hope. Nourishing networks is the end. So, creating healthy bi-directional networks with other people and with ourselves, and learning skills and tools to do that. The 5-to-1 rule is a really important rule, and it's a very challenging one. You have to say 5, if you want to have healthy relationships, you need to say 5 positive things for every criticism. And I play a lot of pickleball, so I teach this on the pickleball court with my partners. Like, if you want us to work well together, you're gonna have to say 5 things to every criticism on a shot I make or whatnot. But it's true in the workplace, in your relationships at home with your kids. We wanna be reinforcing and recognizing positive behavior and do less of the criticism. Compassion, the power of forgiveness, super important. So who is in your nourishing network? Who do you all have in your own nourishing network? Gossip in the group chat. Yes, my mom, my husband, family, trusted coworker, sister, my boss. In recovery, maybe it's your sponsor, your sponsee, work wife, dog. So that's the thing. In my nourishing networks, when I lived in Reno, Nevada, like, my wild horses were in my nourishing networks. But it's got, whoever you need, but we all need to feel connected, and we all need to feel nurtured. So that's a very important part of hope. And what I was going to say about goals, you're up to 95% more likely to achieve something if you write it down, so you write your plan down, and then you check in with someone regularly on your progress and your process and what you're doing. So accountability is so important for building hope and achieving what it is we want. The E in the shine is eliminating challenges. So how do we get rid of all the negative thinking patterns that our brain just does automatically? How do we become conscious of that and then intervene with skills that we've already talked about? So limiting beliefs. Beliefs, hope is the belief the future can be better than today and that I and we have the power to make it so. So your belief that you can create a better future is so important. And we're so trained to these negative, limiting beliefs of ourselves. There's something called the nocebo effect. So the placebo effect, you take a pill, you're told it's gonna have a positive side effect. Over half the people have that positive experience, even if it's a sugar pill. The same thing or the opposite thing is true, the nocebo. So you're given a pill, it's a sugar pill, and I'm telling you, you might have a stomach ache, a headache. Half of the people will have those symptoms with just sugar. So your belief is so important. So you must believe that you can recover. And also as therapists and as teachers and as doctors, our belief in those we're supporting is sometimes more predictive of outcomes than their own belief in themselves. So making sure you never give up your belief in someone's ability to create a better future for themselves. So how do you all eliminate your negative thinking patterns and beliefs? What do you do to switch? Medication, journaling, reality testing, counseling, gardening, willful ignorance, sports, healthy ways, yes, process them, talk to my partner, positive affirmations, and dance it out. So it's, you can use stress skills, happiness habits, people in your nourishing network, God, surrender, all of these things. So, but it's about becoming aware of these patterns. When the work we did in the prison youth, they're like, we do all of them. Like, we do everything. And I'm like, we all do everything. And we have some patterns that we do more than others. And it's about learning how to just identify it and then start intervening on it. All right. So hopeless is the belief that things are bad and there's nothing I and we can do about it. And I say you shine your way from hopelessness to hope. So when you look at the hope definition, again, in mapping shine, hope is the belief. So we use eliminating challenges to really improve our belief that the future, so we're taking inspired actions to our future, can be better. To create better, we use our stress skills and our happiness habits. That I and we need hope ourselves, and then we need collective hope. And we use nourishing networks to do that, have the power, and again, taking inspired actions to make it so. And that's how we get to the definition of hope. And I know we're all short on time, but I've mapped the 12-step framework to the SHINE framework. To me, the 12 steps became a part of, they were a part of my process in my early sobriety and later, and I love meetings and I love connection. But to me, it wasn't enough because I didn't like the data around success rate. So to me, bringing in the biology and the science to the actual practices has been a really important journey for myself. But you can take a look at that. And then, what it's like now. I'm doing the work that I love all over the world. I feel so blessed. I am so committed to my hope. I do all of the practices that I talk about. To reprogram my brain, I spent 6 months of 2 hours of meditation a day because I was so impulsive. I was so compulsive. I couldn't sit still, and that changed my life dramatically. So I've spoken at the United Nations. I work to get mental health in the Sustainable Development Goals. I've been in the Harvard boardroom talking about hope science, talking to anyone and everyone, anywhere in the world that will listen, because I believe hope is so important to solving, and teaching hope is so important to solving, the global mental health, addiction, violence crisis. And we've been doing this programming all over the world. We use the sunflower as the international symbol of hope, hence the yellow dress. So I'm often in yellow because I'm usually doing hope stuff. Sunflowers are heliotropic. They follow the sun. And then when things get dark at night or cloudy, they turn and they face each other. And, it's so important that we learn to do that. We know every child needs at least one trusted adult in their life. And, sadly, a lot of our teachers report that half of the class can't identify one trusted adult. And this is predictive of so many outcomes. So ensuring all of our kids, I love the main stats on love because that is such an important component of hope. So we plant sunflowers all over the world. We're activating hope in education, so we're teaching hope as a skill. We're now, activating communities. Chicago is a hopeful city where we license our programs to the entire community. My aim is that I want to demystify hopelessness. Hopelessness is not a diagnosis. It's not a disease. It's a moment in time. And once you understand that it's a moment in time, and you can identify that moment, and you know that you have power to manage that moment and get towards hope, for me, everything changes in life. So that's our Hopeful Cities Ambassador, and yes, we got an International Day of Hope established at the UN. I've been working on this for years, and it's was such a challenge, and so grateful that it passed. I will report here, we had 161 countries vote in support of the day. Unfortunately, we had one country vote against it, which happened to be our own country. So making a public statement about why we don't need hope. So we have our work cut out for us. You know, hope is nonpartisan. It's something so critical. So to me, that just motivates me even more to get this work out into the world, because I believe, you know, with hope, anything is possible. Excited about that day, July 12th. You can measure your hope at My Hope Score. Bring hopeful minds to your schools. Join us for the International Day of Hope. We have a lot of free resources that you can use to start learning about hope and teaching it in your community. And again, this is, I mean, to me, the truth about hopelessness. You know, we hear the word hopelessness and we're so conditioned to think it's like you have to be in the worst of conditions to experience a moment of hopelessness. But we're all experiencing these moments all the time. It's normal, it's just unconscious. It's sadness. When's the last time you felt sadness and I can't do anything about it? Or power, you know, or angry and I can't do anything about it. I mean, a lot of my childhood looking at my dad not being able to help him, so sad, so helpless, and then losing him in that final way was horrific for me. But I was not taught how to manage that moment in a healthier way and how to get back to hope. And so the moment can always be managed, and we can always shine our way from hopelessness to hope. So to wrap up, how's everyone doing now? Checking in. You're ready for this summit. I'm so excited for you all. It's such an honor to be here sharing my own experience, strength, and hope. I mean, I never imagined I would be running around the world teaching hope as a science. You know, I feel so blessed to honor my dad, not by his loss, but by what he had taught me and what he's now bringing to the world. Because without his brilliant business expertise, his knowledge of strategy, operationalizing things, like I wouldn't be able to do this. And so I learned so much from him, and I get to carry his legacy forward in this way, as well as my mom, who's been a champion for me. So, all right, feeling hopeful. Are you guys ready for the day? Yes, the statistics shared earlier about the work being done in Maine, and that this is a massive group of people caring so much about recovery. It is so hard to see someone you love so much struggle and not be able to help them. And, you know, it drives us into our own state of hopelessness, our own sadness and our own helplessness, because we can't do anything about it. So if you're working with people in recovery, you've got to work on your own hope just as much as you teach them to work on theirs. So wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, everyone.